My parents kicked me out for exposing my wife's affair. 10 years later, they begged for my forgiveness. I used to believe there were two kinds of people in this world, the kind who betrayed you, and the kind who stood beside you when betrayal finally came. For most of my life, I thought my parents belonged to the second kind. I was wrong. My name is Daniel Carter. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knew your truck before they knew your name, where church bells rang every Sunday morning, and where family reputation mattered more than truth. My father, Richard Carter, was a proud man. He had built his small construction company from nothing, and reminded everyone of that fact any chance he got. My mother, Elaine, was softer on the outside, always smiling for neighbors, always baking pies for fundraisers, always acting like our family was the perfect picture hanging on a wall. And then there was my younger brother, Brandon. Brandon was the golden child. He could wreck my father's pickup at 17 and somehow be the victim. He could fail 2 semesters of community college and still be figuring himself out. He could borrow money and never pay it back. But if I brought it up, I was being selfish. I was the responsible one. That was my assigned role. I worked in my father's company every summer from the time I was 15. I learned how to frame houses, pour concrete, read plans, handle angry clients, and keep my mouth shut when my father barked orders. I didn't complain because I thought hard work would earn respect. It never did. By the time I was 28, I had married a woman named Emily. Emily was beautiful in the kind of way that made strangers turn their heads. Blonde hair, bright green eyes, a laugh that made you feel like you were the funniest person alive. When I met her at a friend's barbecue, I thought I had won the lottery. She made me feel seen. At least, that was what I thought back then. We got married after 2 years of dating. My parents loved her immediately. My mother called her the daughter she never had. My father told me, half jokingly, not to mess it up because a woman like Emily could have done better. I laughed when he said it. I should have listened more carefully. For the first few years, our marriage looked good from the outside. We bought a modest house. I worked long hours. Emily worked part-time at a dental office. Though she often complained that she was meant for more than scheduling appointments and dealing with insurance forms, I supported her dreams. I paid for online courses she never finished. I encouraged her to start a small home decor business that lasted 4 months before she lost interest. Whenever she felt stuck, I blamed myself for not giving her enough excitement. That was my mistake. I kept thinking love meant carrying more weight. Eventually, I realized I was the only one carrying anything. The first signs were small. Emily started guarding her phone. She changed her passcode. She took calls in the garage. She said she was going out with coworkers, but when I asked which ones, her answers were vague. Then she started dressing differently. Not for me. For leaving the house. One Friday night, she came downstairs wearing a black dress I had never seen before, perfume in the air, lipstick perfect. I looked up from the kitchen table and asked, "Where are you going?" She didn't even pause. "Girls' night." "With who?" She rolled her eyes. "Daniel, don't start." "I'm not starting. I'm asking." "With Megan and Ashley from work." I nodded, but something felt wrong. Megan had moved to Indiana 6 months earlier. I didn't say anything. I just watched her leave. For 3 months, I lived in that strange place between knowing and not wanting to know. Every instinct in me screamed that something was happening. But I kept trying to explain it away. Maybe she was unhappy. Maybe I was working too much. Maybe marriage had just gotten boring. Then came the night. Everything shattered. It was raining hard. I had left work early because one of our job sites had flooded, and there wasn't much else we could do until morning. I stopped by home to change, planning to surprise Emily with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. Her car wasn't in the driveway. That wasn't unusual anymore. But the porch light was on, and through the front window, I saw her purse sitting on the entry table. I stepped inside quietly. The house was warm. There was music playing upstairs. Soft music. The kind she used to play when we first got married. Then I heard laughter. A man's laugh. My body went cold before my mind understood why. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step, feeling like it belonged to someone else. When I reached the bedroom door, it was half open. I saw enough. I saw my wife. And I saw my brother, Brandon, in my bed. For a moment, nobody moved. Emily screamed and grabbed the sheet. Brandon jumped up, stumbling, his face pale. I didn't yell at first. I couldn't. There are moments in life so violent they happen silently. The world doesn't explode. It narrows. It becomes a single image burned into your memory forever. My brother. In my bedroom. My wife, crying like she was the one who had been hurt. Finally, Brandon said, "Danny, listen, I punched him before he finished. I'm not proud of it, but I won't lie and say I regret it." He fell against the dresser, blood coming from his nose. Emily screamed again, telling me to stop, telling me I was acting crazy. Crazy. That word woke something in me. I looked at her and said, "How long?" She sobbed. It didn't mean anything. "How long?" Brandon wiped his face and said, "Man, it just happened." I turned to him. "How long?" Neither of them answered. That was answer enough. I walked out of the room, grabbed my phone, and called my father. He picked up on the second ring. "What is it?" I said. "Come to my house. Now." "What happened?" "Your son is sleeping with my wife." Silence. Then my father said something I never forgot. "Don't do anything stupid." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I'm coming." Don't do anything stupid. By the time my parents arrived, Emily was downstairs crying on the couch, wrapped in a robe. Brandon sat in the kitchen holding a towel to his face. I stood near the front door like a stranger in my own home. My mother rushed to Brandon first. To Brandon. "Oh my God. What happened to your face?" I stared at her. My father looked at me with disgust. "Did you hit your brother?" I laughed once. It came out empty. "That's what you want to talk about?" My mother turned to me, eyes wet. "Daniel, violence is never the answer." I pointed toward Emily. "She was in our bed with him." Emily cried harder. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Brandon stood up and said, "It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I said. "A mistake is forgetting to lock the door." This was months of lies. My father's jaw tightened. "You don't know that." I pulled out my phone. Because after months of suspicion, I had done something I never thought I would do. I had checked our phone records. I had taken screenshots, late night calls, hundreds of texts, hotel charges on a credit card Emily thought I didn't monitor. I had proof. I showed them everything. My mother looked away. My father barely glanced at it. Then he said, "This needs to stay inside the family." I stared at him. "What?" "You heard me. No police, no public drama, no divorce talk tonight. We sit down, we talk, and we fix it." I said, "There's nothing to fix." My mother walked toward me. "Daniel, marriage is sacred. People make mistakes." I looked at Brandon. "He's not people. He's my brother." Brandon muttered. I said I was sorry. I stepped toward him, but my father blocked me. "That's enough." I looked into my father's eyes and saw it clearly. He wasn't angry at Brandon. He was angry at me for exposing him. That realization hurt more than the affair. I said, "I'm filing for divorce." Emily looked up sharply. "Daniel, please." My mother gasped like I had said something cruel. My father's face turned red. "You will not tear this family apart over one mistake." I said, "I didn't tear this family apart." My father stepped closer. "You listen to me. Brandon messed up. Emily messed up. But you are the one choosing to destroy everything." That sentence changed me. Something inside me, something loyal and desperate, finally cracked. I laughed again, but this time there was anger in it. "So she sleeps with my brother, and I'm the problem?" My mother whispered. "We're saying forgiveness is important." "No," I said. "You're saying Brandon matters more." Nobody denied it. That silence was the real answer. The next day, the whole town knew something had happened. Not because of me. Because Emily went to my mother's house crying, and my mother called relatives asking them to pray for our family. By Sunday, people at church were looking at me like I was dangerous. The story had changed. Now I was the angry husband who had assaulted his brother. Now Emily was a confused woman who had made a mistake because she felt neglected. Now Brandon was ashamed and trying to heal. And I was the one refusing forgiveness. I went to my parents' house that Sunday evening, hoping some part of them would wake up. My father met me at the door. "You need to apologize to your brother." I thought I had misheard him. "For what?" "For putting him in the hospital. He had a broken nose. He could have had worse." I said, "He slept with my wife." My father lowered his voice. "And you humiliated this family." There it was. Not betrayal. Not adultery. Humiliation. That was the sin my parents cared about. My mother appeared behind him, crying. "Daniel, please. We can still get through this. Emily wants counseling." "I don't care what Emily wants. That's your wife. She stopped being my wife when she chose Brandon." My father pointed his finger at me. "You always had this pride. Always thought you were better than him." I stared at him in disbelief. "I worked for you for 13 years. I paid Brandon's rent twice because you asked me. I gave him my old truck. I covered for him when he stole equipment from the yard." Brandon appeared behind them, bruised and pathetic. "That was years ago," he said. I looked at him. "You took my wife." His face hardened. "Maybe if you treated her right, she wouldn't have come to me." My mother said, "Brandon, don't." But she didn't sound angry. She sounded worried he had said too much. My father crossed his arms. "I think you need to leave." I frowned. "What?" "You heard me. Until you calm down and stop attacking this family, you're not welcome here." I looked past him into the house where I had grown up. The house where I had spent Christmas mornings, birthdays, Sunday dinners. The house where I had believed I belonged. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. I said, "Mom?" She wiped her tears. "Maybe some space would be good." Space. That was the word she used while helping my father erase me. I nodded slowly. Then I took my house key off my keyring, the old brass key to their front door. I placed it on the porch railing. My father looked surprised for half a second. I said, "You won't have to ask me to leave again." Then I walked away. The divorce was ugly. Emily fought me on everything. Not because she wanted the house or the furniture, but because my parents encouraged her. My father even paid part of her legal fees through a loan that was never repaid. When I found that out, I stopped feeling sad. Sadness requires hope. I had none left. Brandon and Emily didn't stay apart. 3 months after our divorce was finalized, they moved in together. 6 months after that, she was pregnant. My mother posted a picture online of Brandon holding Emily's belly. The caption said, "Every blessing arrives in God's timing." I stared at that post for a long time. Then I blocked all of them: my parents, Brandon, Emily, aunts, cousins, family friends. Anyone who had told me to be the bigger person. Anyone who had said, "You only get one family." Anyone who had asked me to forgive people who had never truly apologized. I sold the house. I quit my father's company. I packed everything I owned into my truck and left Ohio before sunrise on a Tuesday morning. No goodbye. No forwarding address. No dramatic speech. Just gone. I ended up in Denver because an old friend from trade school, Marcus, offered me a couch and a job. Marcus owned a small renovation company. Nothing fancy. Kitchens, bathrooms, basements, decks. He was fair, direct, and honest. The first week I worked with him, I kept waiting for the insult hidden inside every instruction. It never came. One Friday, after we finished a basement remodel, Marcus handed me my paycheck and said, "You do good work, man." I almost didn't know what to say. Respect felt strange after years of being treated like an appliance. I worked like a man trying to outrun a burning house. 12-hour days. Weekend jobs. Night courses in project management. I learned estimating, permits, client relations, accounting. Every skill my father had used to control me, I learned for myself. 2 years later, Marcus offered me a partnership. 5 years later, we expanded. By year 10, Carter and Blake Renovations had 30 employees, 2 offices, and contracts across 3 states. I bought a house in the foothills with wide windows and quiet mornings. I dated a little but never remarried. Not because I hated love, I just no longer mistook chaos for passion. Peace became the most valuable thing in my life. For 10 years, I heard almost nothing from my family. A cousin emailed once to say my parents were getting older and I should let the past go. I deleted it. An aunt messaged me after Christmas, saying my mother cried every year because she missed me. I wanted to ask if she cried before or after posting pictures with Brandon and Emily. I didn't respond. Then, on a cold November morning, 10 years after I left, my assistant knocked on my office door. "Daniel, there's a woman at the front asking for you." I looked up from a contract. "Who?" "She says she's your mother." The pen slipped from my hand. For a moment, I was 28 again, standing on that porch, waiting for my mother to choose me. I swallowed. "What does she want?" She wouldn't say. "She's with an older man." "My father." "Of course." I stood and walked to the front lobby. They looked smaller than I remembered. My father's hair had gone mostly white. His shoulders, once broad and intimidating, had rounded with age. My mother clutched her purse with both hands, her face thinner, her eyes tired. When she saw me, she started crying immediately. "Daniel." I stopped several feet away. "Elaine." She flinched. "Not Mom. Elaine." My father cleared his throat. "Son." I looked at him. "Richard." His mouth tightened. "Good." They wanted familiar names. They wanted shortcuts back into my heart. I gave them none. My mother took a step forward. "You look so good." I said nothing. My father glanced around the lobby, clearly impressed despite himself. The polished floors, the glass walls, the company logo behind the reception desk. "So this is your place?" "Yes." My mother smiled through tears. "We heard you were doing well." "From who?" She hesitated. "Your cousin Mark." "Of course." I folded my arms. "Why are you here?" My mother looked at my father. My father looked at the floor. That was new. The man who always had something to say suddenly couldn't find words. Finally, my mother whispered, "We need your help." There it was. Not, "We were wrong." Not, "We're sorry." "We need your help." I almost laughed. "With what?" My father exhaled. "The company is in trouble." I stared at him. "Your company?" He nodded. "Carter Construction?" Another nod. "What kind of trouble?" My mother wiped her eyes. "After you left, things became difficult." I didn't rescue her from that sentence. I let it sit there. "After you left." As if I had abandoned them. As if they hadn't thrown me away. My father said, "Brandon took over operations a few years ago. That explained plenty. He expanded too fast. Took bad contracts. Didn't keep up with payroll taxes. There were lawsuits." I asked, "Where's Brandon now?" My mother began crying harder. My father's face darkened. "He left." "Left?" With money, my father said. Company money. The room went quiet. I looked at them, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to pity. Not forgiveness. Pity. My mother said. He and Emily moved to Florida. That name hit less than I expected. Emily. A ghost from a house I no longer lived in. They're still together? I asked. My mother shook her head. No. She left him last year. Of course she did. My father rubbed his forehead. There's debt. A lot of it. We may lose the house. I looked at him carefully. The house? My childhood home. The one I had been told to leave. My mother reached for me. But I stepped back before she touched my arm. Daniel, please. We didn't know who else to ask. I said. You could ask Brandon. My father's jaw clenched. Don't be cruel. I raised my eyebrows. Cruel? My mother whispered. We know we made mistakes. I waited. She continued. But we're still your parents. There it was again. The old weapon. Family. I said. You were my parents 10 years ago too. My mother covered her mouth. My father looked away. I said. When I found my wife in bed with Brandon, you protected him. When I showed you proof, you told me to keep quiet. When I wanted a divorce, you blamed me. When I came to your house, you kicked me out. My mother sobbed. I was scared. Of what? Of losing the family. I nodded slowly. So, you chose the person who destroyed it. My father finally snapped. We didn't come here to be judged. I looked at him, and the old fear tried to rise. But it couldn't. I wasn't his employee anymore. I wasn't his obedient son. I was a grown man, standing in a building with my name on the wall. No, I said calmly. You came here because you need money. His face flushed. My mother said. That's not fair. It's completely fair. She shook her head. We came because we miss you. I looked at her. Then why now? She had no answer. I said. For 10 years, you had my email. Cousins had ways to reach me. You could have written, called, apologized, anything. My father said. You blocked us. You could have sent a letter. Silence. You didn't come when you missed me. You came when Brandon finally did to you what he did to me. My mother's crying changed then. Less dramatic. More broken. Maybe because she knew I was right. My father lowered himself into one of the lobby chairs like his legs had failed him. He ruined us, he said quietly. I looked at him for a long time. Then I said, no. You let him. His eyes lifted. I continued. You made excuses for him his whole life. You taught him there were no consequences. You cleaned up every mess. You sacrificed me to protect him. And when there was no one left to sacrifice, he took from you. My father's mouth opened, but nothing came out. My mother whispered, we're sorry. I looked at her. Those words, 10 years late, I had imagined hearing them so many times. In the early days, I thought an apology would heal everything. I pictured my mother calling, crying, admitting they had been wrong. I pictured my father showing up at my door, ashamed, but sincere. Back then, I would have forgiven them instantly. That was the saddest part. They could have had me back when my heart was still open. But they waited until my forgiveness became expensive. I said, what exactly are you asking for? My father looked embarrassed. My mother answered, a loan. How much? She looked at my father. He muttered, 240,000. I smiled slightly, not because it was funny, because it was perfect. They had thrown away their son, and now they wanted an invoice paid. I said, no. My mother gasped. Daniel, please. No. My father stood up. You don't even want to hear the details? I heard enough. We'll pay you back. No, you won't. His face twisted. You really are going to let your parents lose everything? I stepped closer. You let me lose everything. My mother said, you rebuilt. Yes, I said. Without you. That sentence seemed to hit her harder than anything else. My father's anger returned because shame had nowhere else to go. I made you who you are. I looked around the lobby, then back at him. No. You made me believe I had to earn love. I made myself into someone who knew better. His eyes narrowed. After everything I taught you? You taught me what kind of man not to become. He looked like I had slapped him. My mother whispered, please don't say that. But I wasn't finished. For years, I thought I was the unlucky one. I lost my wife, my brother, my parents, my home, my family name. But now I realize I was the only one who escaped. My father sat down again. My mother stared at me like she no longer recognized the child she had raised. Maybe she didn't. That child had died on their porch. I said, I won't give you money. My mother's lips trembled. So that's it? No. I walked to reception and asked my assistant to bring a business card from our legal referral folder. When she handed it to me, I returned and gave it to my mother. This is a bankruptcy attorney. He's good. He'll give you a fair consultation. My father looked at the card with disgust. I don't need charity. I said, then don't take it. My mother held the card like it was the last dry thing in a flood. I continued, I'll pay for one consultation directly to his office. Nothing else. No cash. No loans. No business partnership. No rescue. My father barked a bitter laugh. A consultation. Yes. We drove all this way for a consultation? No. I said. You drove all this way, hoping the son you abandoned was still desperate for your approval. The room went silent. My mother looked down. My father's face hardened, but his eyes were wet. For the first time in my life, I saw him not as a giant, not as a judge, not as the voice in my head telling me I wasn't enough. I saw an old man who had bet everything on the wrong son. And lost. My mother whispered, "Can you ever forgive us?" I took a long breath. That question deserved honesty. "I don't hate you anymore." Her face lifted with hope, but I continued, "That's not the same as forgiveness." She closed her eyes. "I spent years carrying what you did. I was angry every morning. I replayed every conversation. I wondered what I could have said differently to make you love me enough to choose me." My voice stayed steady, but my chest hurt. Then one day, I realized the answer was nothing. There was nothing I could have said. Nothing I could have proved. Because the problem was never that I wasn't a good enough son. The problem was that you were not fair enough parents. My mother began sobbing again. My father stared at the floor. I said, "I forgive myself for waiting so long to walk away." "That's the forgiveness I needed." My mother asked. "And us?" I looked at her. "I hope one day you understand what you did. But I'm not giving you access to my life just because yours fell apart." She nodded slowly, broken. My father stood, his pride barely holding him upright. "Come on, Elaine." She didn't move at first. Then she looked at me and said, "I loved you, Daniel." I felt that sentence land somewhere old and bruised. I believed her. That was the complicated part. I believed my mother loved me in the limited way she understood love. But love without courage becomes cruelty. Love that stays silent while someone is destroyed is not protection. It is permission. I said, "I know." Her tears paused. Then I added, "But you loved comfort more." She covered her mouth and turned away. They left a few minutes later. Through the glass doors, I watched them walk to an old sedan parked near the curb. My father moved slowly. My mother leaned into him, crying. A younger version of me would have run after them. He would have apologized for hurting their feelings. He would have written a check. He would have mistaken guilt for love. But I stayed where I was. My assistant quietly asked, "Are you okay?" I looked at the company logo on the wall, Carter, and Blake Renovations. For years, I had considered changing the name. Carter felt stained. It reminded me of my father, of Brandon, of everything I had escaped. But that day, I saw it differently. Carter was mine too. And I had rebuilt it into something honest. "I'm okay," I said. And I meant it. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee cooling beside me. The letter was 6 pages long. She wrote about the night everything happened. She admitted she had known more than she said. Emily had come to her weeks before I caught them, crying that she was confused about Brandon. My mother told her to end it quietly and never tell me. She thought she was protecting me. That was what she wrote. Protecting me. I sat with that sentence for a long time. She also wrote that my father had always been harder on me because he trusted me to survive it. Brandon was weak, she said. Brandon needed more patience. I folded the letter down when I read that. I had spent my whole childhood being punished for being strong. That is something many families do to responsible children. They give grace to the reckless and burdens to the reliable. They forgive the ones who break things and demand understanding from the ones who bleed quietly. By the end of the letter, my mother wrote, "I do not expect money. I do not expect a relationship. I only want you to know that you were right. We failed you. I failed you. I am sorry." I didn't cry right away. I just sat there as the morning light moved across the table. Then I cried harder than I had in years, not because the letter fixed anything. It didn't. But because some wounded part of me had waited a decade to hear one sentence. "You were right." 3 months later, I heard from my cousin Mark that my parents sold the house before the bank could take it. They moved into a small apartment near my aunt. Carter Construction closed. Brandon tried calling me once from a Florida number. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. I deleted it without listening. Some people mistake access for forgiveness. They think, because they are sorry now, they deserve a doorway back into your life. But remorse is not a key. It is only the beginning of understanding the damage. A year after my parents came to my office, I visited Ohio for the first time in 11 years. Not for them, for myself. I drove past my old street. The house had new owners now. A blue minivan in the driveway. A basketball hoop near the garage. The porch railing had been painted white. For a moment, I saw myself standing there again, placing the key down, walking away with my heart in pieces. I wanted to tell that younger version of me something. I wanted to tell him that leaving would hurt, but staying would have destroyed him. I wanted to tell him that family is not measured by blood, or last names, or holiday photos, or people who say forgive when they really mean be quiet. Family is measured by who tells the truth when lying would be easier, by who stands beside you when your life burns down, by who does not ask you to bleed so someone else can avoid shame. Before leaving town, I stopped at a diner, Marcus, and I used to visit back when I still lived there. The waitress didn't recognize me. That felt good. I ordered black coffee and pancakes. As I sat by the window, an elderly couple walked in. For half a second, I thought it was my parents. It wasn't. But I noticed something. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake. I didn't feel like running. That was how I knew I had finally healed. Healing wasn't some grand moment where I forgave everyone and hugged them under soft music. Healing was eating pancakes in the town that broke me and realizing it no longer owned me. Later that evening, I drove back toward Denver. The highway stretched ahead, wide and quiet. My phone buzzed once at a gas station. It was a text from my mother. Thinking of you today. I hope you are well. I stared at it. For a long time, I didn't know what to do. Then I typed, I am well. I hope you are too. I sent it. That was all. No invitation. No promise. No reopening of the past. Just a sentence. A boundary can have kindness in it. That is something I had to learn. Years ago, I thought forgiveness meant letting people come back. I thought it meant pretending the wound had not happened. I thought it meant sitting at the same table with people who had chosen my pain because their comfort mattered more. Now I know better. Sometimes, forgiveness is simply putting down the weight. Sometimes it is wishing people peace from a distance. Sometimes it is refusing revenge, but also refusing access. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say to the people who abandoned you is not, I hate you. It is, I survived you. My parents kicked me out for exposing my wife's affair. 10 years later, they came begging for my forgiveness. And maybe one day, in some quiet corner of my heart, I will fully forgive them. But I will never again abandon myself to make them feel like good parents. That part of me is gone. And the man who replaced him is finally free.